Welcome. On behalf of Discovery, its Advisory and Diversity Council, and many partners, thank you for coming. I'm Kathy Renzetti. I'm the Executive Director of Discover E, also known as Discover Engineering. Today, we are celebrating International Women in Engineering Day with our theme, Imagining Tomorrow, a conversation about the importance of women persisting in engineering. 30 years ago, Discover E was the first organization to recognize the need for engineering outreach when it called on engineers around the US to work with young students for Engineers Week in 1990. Since then, tens of thousands of engineers across the country have participated as role models and provided hands-on engineering experiences to millions of students. Achieving gender and racial equity in engineering and technology is bigger than any one person, program, or organization. It will take the collective efforts of many. Working as a coalition, Discover E recruits educators and role models and arms them with compelling messages, culturally relevant activities and projects, and opportunities to engage students in engineering. Why this approach? From years of research, some of which you'll hear today, we know that girls choose to pursue an engineering education. They demonstrate an interest in and positive attitudes about engineering. They embrace a STEM identity and have a strong support network, and they see the value in the field of engineering. But welcoming girls into engineering is only half of the equation. We also must help women stay in the field, not only as innovators, but as role models. We need them to welcome and guide the next generation of engineers when they arrive ready to take on tomorrow's challenges. While girls come to engineering on different paths and for a variety of reasons, we hope you, our guests today, will leave with a better understanding on why girls come and why women stay. We'll have time for Q&A at the end, so please use the Q&A feature of Zoom to submit your questions. So let's get started. I have the honor of introducing the co-chairs of the Congressional Women in STEM Caucus today. So please join me in welcoming Congresswoman Chrissy Houlihan. U.S. Representative Chrissy Houlihan is an Air Force veteran, engineer, entrepreneur, and educator who is continuing her career of service as the first woman ever to represent Pennsylvania's 6th district in Congress. Chrissy is the daughter and granddaughter of Holocaust survivors who came to America with nothing. She grew up in a military family. Her parents met when her grandfather and father flew P-3s in the same Navy squadron. She earned her engineering degree from Stanford with an ROTC scholarship that launched her service in the U.S. Air Force and Air Force Reserves, and later earned her MS in Technology and Policy from MIT. These experiences have helped shape her political vision of a great nation, united by common values that leave no one behind. Welcome, Congresswoman Houlihan.
Thank you very much, Kathy, for those really kind words. And I'm really excited to be here today. And thank you, everyone, for hosting me and all of you. The conversation that we're having today is really important, and it's very timely, and it's particularly timely in the wake of this pandemic that has once again demonstrated just how important a diverse STEM economy and talent pipeline is to our nation's very survival. In fact, as I'm speaking to you right now, directly across the hall from me, I'm participating in a hearing with the Secretary of Defense, where I will be in about 10 minutes asking questions about the STEM pipeline and diversity thereof. So it really is genuinely timely conversation for me at this point in time. This conversation, as Kathy mentioned, is also deeply personal to me. As she mentioned, I served as an engineer in the Air Force. I worked on anti-ballistic missile defense at the tail end of the Cold War. And I know how firsthand large and crucial a contribution that women can make in STEM each and every day to our country. So frankly, that's why I did found the first ever, unfortunately, Women in STEM caucus in Congress. We're focused on simultaneously encouraging and elevating women in a vast array of STEM careers. The fact that it is bipartisan in today's hyper-polarized climate really speaks to the larger point that having more women in STEM positively affects us all, and no amount of partisanship should or can change that. Plus, it's basically a known fact in Washington that if you need people to roll up their sleeves and actually get work done, you turn to women. Earlier this year, the National Academies released a report on the pandemic's impact on the career of women in STEM fields. Women and other underrepresented minorities are facing systemic inequities and additional challenges in STEM, which are amplified by COVID-19. I began my remarks by mentioning how timely this conversation is. And as we rebuild our economy, I'm looking specifically at how we can empower our women in STEM, how we can build a more equitable STEM economy and develop a more diverse representative talent pipeline. And that's why I'm championing bills like the STEM Opportunities Act, which will help to break down barriers preventing more women and underrepresented minorities from pursuing STEM education and careers. And that's why I introduced the STEM Restart Act, which is another bipartisan initiative which will help bridge the gap between mid-career STEM professionals with an emphasis on women and girls looking to return to the workforce, particularly in the wake of this pandemic, and small businesses who are seeking qualified talent. So today's conversation is a reminder to us all. So many people from all walks of life are committed to a more equitable and diverse STEM economy. And I'm really proud to be here in Congress working to achieve exactly that. And I look forward to working alongside all of you in this long overdue initiative. With that, I'll say thank you and turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Houlihan. Congresswoman Wolorski, Stevens, and Lesko could not be here today in person, but they did send recorded remarks. I will introduce Jackie Wolorski. She is a lifelong Hoosier, born and raised in South Bend, who represents Indiana's 2nd District in Congress. Serving on the House Ways and Means Committee and as the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Worker and Family Support, Jackie is focused on helping small businesses and manufacturers grow, expanding opportunities for American workers to succeed, and empowering individuals and families to thrive. She also serves as the ranking member of the House Ethics Committee and as co-chair of the Congressional Women in STEM Caucus. Congresswoman Wolorski's remarks.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me and my fellow co-chairs of the bipartisan Women in STEM Caucus to celebrate International Women in Engineering Day. I want to take a moment to recognize Discover Engineering, or Discover E, and its important work to support engineers, technicians, and technologists who help make the world a better place. I'm grateful to work alongside of you to advance, encourage, and support women and girls in science, technology, engineering, and math. As a lifelong Hoosier and representative for Indiana's 2nd Congressional District, I'm committed to fighting for workers and families and advocating for good jobs and new opportunities. Innovation is a key driver of economic growth and prosperity, and strengthening our STEM workforce is vital to keeping the American dream alive and well. My district is home to many present and future members of the STEM workforce with a thriving manufacturing sector and great schools like University of Notre Dame and Ivy Tech Community College. STEM skills are the key to unlocking the economy of tomorrow and continued development of technical, scientific, and computer skills, which will keep America's workforce second to none. It's equally important that we ensure women and girls have plenty of opportunities in STEM fields. Currently, women only constitute 28% of the STEM workforce, and they represent around 21% of engineering majors in higher education. Closing these gaps must start with our youngest students, getting kids into STEM classrooms early and building girls' confidence that they can grow up to be successful researchers, scientists, and engineers. We also need to promote workforce development to skill up our current workforce and help prevent older workers from being displaced by automation and the other rapid technological changes. By closing the gender gap in these fields and promoting resilience in the American workforce, we can boost American innovation and keep our country on the cutting edge of technological advancement. Thank you again to Discover E for hosting this wonderful event and for all your work to advance our shared goals.
Congresswoman Haley Stevens grew up in Rochester Hills, Michigan. She earned a master's degree in social policy and philosophy and a bachelor's degree in political science and philosophy from American University. Congresswoman Haley Stevens sits on the House Committee on Education and Labor and on the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, where she also serves as chairwoman of the Research and Technology Subcommittee. She also serves as co-chair of the Congressional Women in STEM Caucus. Congresswoman Stevens remarks.
Hi everyone, Congresswoman Haley Stevens here, proudly representing Michigan's 11th District and a proud co-chair of the Women in STEM Caucus here in the United States Congress. Happy International Women in Engineering Day. I am so proud to join all of you in recognizing this day. And in particular, I want to thank Discover E for bringing us all together to talk about the importance of women in STEM. As we all know, women are problem solvers, and so are engineers. And we do have a fair amount of problems that I really see as opportunities, and we need the best and brightest minds to be involved. And we need to open up the pathways for women in science, women in engineering to be at the table with all of this. And in particular, we want to make sure that we have women from all over the country and all geographic areas and women of color who are in engineering, helping us to thrive, grow, and prosper. That's what motivates my work. So happy International Women in Engineering Day.
Congresswoman Lesko serves on the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, where she serves on the subcommittee on energy, on the subcommittee on consumer protection and commerce. Congresswoman Lesko was appointed as leader designee to the Republican Steering Committee and to serve as an assistant whip for the 117th Congress. She also serves as a co-chair of the Women in STEM Caucus and a co-chair of the Crime Survivors and Justice Caucus. Congresswoman Lesko's remarks.
Good afternoon. I'm U.S. Congresswoman Debbie Lesko from Arizona's 8th Congressional District. Happy International Women in Engineering Day. As one of the co-chairs of the Congressional Women in STEM Caucus, I am so excited to speak with you today. I would like to thank Discover E for hosting this important event and for encouraging young women to get involved in STEM fields. You all are in for an exciting panel today, and I am sure it will be a very lively and informative discussion. We hear a lot about barriers to STEM participation for women and the importance of encouraging young women to participate in STEM fields at a young age. It's important that we not only encourage young women to get involved in STEM fields, but we also show them examples of women succeeding in STEM fields. With such a wonderful lineup of panelists, this event is doing just that. I'm so honored that the caucus was able to be a part of this event, and I look forward to working with you to continue advancing STEM opportunities for women across America. May God bless you and our great nation.
Thank you to the co-chairs of the Congressional Women in STEM Caucus. And now I'd like to go to our panel. I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's discussion. Please join me in welcoming Aisha Lowry. Aisha is the head of Education Programs America with Amazon's Web Services, Training and Certification. She is the former Senior Director, Programs and Scholarships for the National Action Council for Minorities in Engineering, and she has been a STEM advocate for more than 20 years. Aisha?
Thanks so much, Kathy. I'm very excited to be here moderating this session. So let's get started. I'd like to introduce our first two speakers who will discuss the importance of diverse workforce and some of the challenges we face and encounter in trying to achieve this. First, we have Karen Hoarding, who is the Executive Director and CEO for the Society of Women Engineers, a position she's held since 2013. Karen holds a BS in biology from Northern Illinois University and an MBA from Johns Hopkins University. She currently serves on the leadership circle of the 50K Coalition, the first robotics board of directors, the STEM Education Coalition Board of Directors, and the Engineering CAS DEI Advisory Board. And we also have Dr. Ursula Sims. She's the Executive Director of WEPAN, Women in Engineering Proactive Network. She earned her BSc in Biomedical Engineering from Duke University and PhD in Biomedical Engineering from the University of NC at Chapel Hill. She is a member of several professional organizations, including the National Society of Black Engineers, NSBE, the American Society of Engineering Education, ASEE, and Biomedical Engineering Society, BMES. Dr. Sims is a recipient of the NSBE Dr. Janice Limpkin Educator of the Year Golden Torch Award and co-recipient of the National Science Teachers Association Veneer Technology Award. She also serves on multiple boards, including the Clemson General Engineering Advisory Board, the Florence Darlington Technical College Board of Trustees, and NSBE Healthcare Innovation Special Interest Group. So you can see these ladies are doing a lot. So first I'll start with you, Karen. Can you please share the work SWE and others have accomplished to really achieve a diverse workforce? And why is this issue relevant?
Sure. Thanks so much, Aisha, and thank you, Discovery, for having me join today. So let me just share a little bit about SWE and our work, and then I want to touch on the work of the 50K Coalition as well. So SWE was founded in 1950, and since our very beginning, we've really been about helping women succeed and advance in careers as engineers and leaders. And a lot of that is providing access to the networks and the professional development that they need in addition to their technical expertise to be successful. But unfortunately, the research shows us that about 40% of women engineers drop out of the engineering workforce by mid-career. So another important aspect of the work we do at SWE is working with employers to help them improve those retention numbers by understanding the implicit bias that's in the workforce, and not only to understand it and get trained on it, but to understand what bias interrupters are. So in 2016, SWE did our climate control study, and 3 patterns of bias emerged. Prove it again, the tightrope, and the maternal wall. And I just want to touch on the tightrope. So this looks at behaviors and stereotypes around behaviors and male behaviors that are seen as sort of leadership skills and the sort of the narrow balance that women have to have between what's seen as acceptable for women, but what is seen as leadership skills in order to advance. And one of the easy things organizations can do to interrupt that bias is around meetings and looking at what their sort of their standard operating procedures are for meetings. Often women are delegated what we call the office housework. So taking the notes, booking the conference room, organizing the refreshments. They're often talked over during the meetings. Ideas are not given credit when they're brought up by women. So really making sure that managers, leaders, when they're running those meetings, the office housework, set up a schedule to rotate that, make sure that everybody takes a turn and that it's not just the women. When someone's being talked over, pause the meeting and let the person who was interrupted finish their thought. Or, and lastly, if someone's taking credit for another's ideas, stop and say, I think that was actually Aisha's idea. Let's stop and go back to her and let her share more about that idea. So it's kind of these simple things. I encourage organizations to go to biasinterrupters.org, and you can see all sorts of areas from hiring to performance appraisals to the meetings to salary review that can really help interrupt those biases and help retain women in the workforce. And then next, I just want to close by touching on the 50K Coalition. So since 2015, SWE has been part of the 50K Coalition, which is the ACES, which is the American Indian Science and Engineering Society, NSBE, which is the National Society of Black Engineers, and SHIP, which is the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, working to increase the number of diverse engineering graduates to 50,000 by 2025. I'm happy to say we're making some good progress. We started at about 33,000 and we're now approaching 46,000. So I'm pretty confident we're gonna hit that goal. But really the 50K Coalition is built on the idea of collective impact. So we're a little over 60 organizations that are part of the coalition now. So universities, employers, other non-for-profits and professional societies. And really it's about leveraging the best practices. Two areas that we're focused on is community college linkages. So helping students, what are the best practices for getting diverse students through community college and into a 4-year program to finish their engineering degree. And then undergraduate student support and retention. So how are institutions working to better support their diverse students and ultimately retain them and have them graduate? So again, all about the best practices. We'd love to have more organizations join with us. If you'd like more information, you can reach out to me at SWE. And with that, I'll pause and have our next panelist share. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Karen, and thanks for the wealth of information. Glad to see that, progress is being made, even though we still have a long ways to go. And also that you really pointed out the initiative about community college to really show the different pathways that students can really enter into these fields. So Ursula, can you share your thoughts as well on the diverse workforce and why this issue is important?
Sure. Thank you, Aisha. So for decades, we've seen national reports and calls to increase diversity in engineering and computer science. And even for the past 20 years or more, there's been specific federal funding to support equity in STEM work. However, for the most part, the work is being done in silos. And when I say that, I mean addressing the lack of racial diversity and the lack of gender diversity as two separate things. Furthermore, while the number of Black women receiving Bachelor of Science degrees in engineering and computer science has increased over time, the numbers are extremely low. So according to NSF's National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics, Black females only account for about 1% of the bachelor's degrees in engineering and only about 2% of the bachelor's degrees in computer science. In addition, when we look at the workforce, you see that there are even more disturbing statistics. Of the 1.7 million engineering professionals in the US, only 16,000 of them are Black women, which again, that's actually less than 1%. And so while we don't fully understand why the number of Black females earning degrees in engineering and working in the field of engineering remains so low, what we do know is that we need to address the issue holistically and not as just those two silos, gender and race. In addition, focusing on changing the system and not fixing the person is at the forefront. So what we do at the Women in Engineering Proactive Network is use a systems change focus to transform engineering education and to increase the number and advance the prominence of diverse communities of women in engineering. Recognizing that diversity builds excellence, which is part of our goals, we take a research-based approach to develop programming and curate resources for faculty and staff in higher ed and our corporate partners with the end goal, not only promoting access and equity, but changing the culture and climate of the field of engineering. So some of the things that, that Karen spoke about, getting in there and looking at what's truly going on and making that climate more inclusive. Also taking an intersectional approach to addressing the systems of marginalization is key. One of WePan's initiatives, the Art Network, uses a model which we facilitate intentional dialogue between researchers and practitioners. We connect inclusiveness to organizational principles and practices and account for and incorporate intersectional perspectives throughout our work. So WePan and the Art Network employ these techniques through a number of different ways. We host webinars and workshops, meetings where we can have crucial conversations, as well as curating publications and other resources through our Knowledge Center and the ARC Network Library. Some examples of some of the workshops and different events we've had, bystander training, which was one we had earlier this year, and that really addresses some of the issues that Karen mentioned, the things that happen in meetings, and and having that training on how to speak up and not be part of the problem. We have workshops on allyship, how to have more diverse work applicant pools and implicit bias and things along those lines. So really kind of working to attack the problem systemically. Lastly, it's important to focus on why those who are present persist, as opposed to taking that deficit approach of, there's some problem. So we do that through partnerships with like-minded organizations. As Karen mentioned, the 50K Coalition has a lot of different organizations besides the core engineering diversity organization. So WePan is one of those. We also partner with NMEPA, NCWIT, Discovery, and some of the other organizations we hope to build partnerships with over time. So those are some of the different ways that we kind of attack this problem, and specifically looking at it from an intersectional lens. So not just, women and stir, one size fits all women, but looking at women holistically. So all of the different, their intersectionality, all the different things that make up an individual woman's experience. And I just wanted to say in closing, many thanks to Discovery for organizing this event and including WePan, and happy International Women in Engineering Day.
Thanks so much, Ursula. And thank you for really sharing the work that WePan and others really have, been doing to really help to achieve increasing the number of African-American women in engineering. This definitely is an important issue, and we're happy to have you here to be able to share some of those things that, you've done, as well as the organizations are doing as well. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Aisha.
So again, thank you, Karen and Ursula. We're going to actually bring in some of our additional panel speakers. And I'd like to introduce our next two speakers. We have Annabelle Flores and Kaylin Hardy. So first, Annabelle Flores is Vice President of Electronic Warfare Systems for Raytheon Intelligence and Space, which is a business of Raytheon Technologies. She oversees the overall strategic direction and operation of a diverse portfolio of electronic warfare products, such as the Navy's Next Generation Jammer and the U.S. Army's Electronic Warfare Planning and Management Tool, as well as the business's high energy laser systems and applied signal technology area. That's a mouthful. Flores was educated at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She earned a dual master's degree in mechanical engineering and an MBA through MIT's Leaders for Global Operations program. She also earned a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the same institution. And Kaylin Hardy. Kaylin is a mechanical engineer with Bechtel's Nuclear Security and Environmental Global Business Unit. She earned a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering in 2020 from Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia. Kaylin is currently supporting NASA's Mobile Launcher 2 project in Florida as a mechanical subsystem designer. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today. And so after listening to Karen, Ursula, and Kathy really talk about, girls who pursue STEM in school and women who persist in the field as really needing strong support networks, was there a person or an experience that was influential either in your school or your career who really made you to pursue engineering? And I'll start with you, Annabelle.
Thank you, Aisha. So, absolutely. My career has always been very much dependent on other people helping me along. And the first person, and I credit my middle school math teacher, he said, you should be an engineer. And I didn't even know what engineering was at the time. So it was very much like, oh, okay, sure. And since middle school, that was my plan because he saw something in me that led me down that goal. And to the points made earlier, it's one thing for us to get degrees in engineering. It's another to keep building careers. And very early on, I met a mentor who was also a Latina engineer that was working through this very same industry that is very male dominated historically. And seeing her build her career, she was a leader. She had broken down barriers and was very open in sharing those with me. That gave me the confidence that, yes, I can do this. I have the skill sets and the support I need to make a successful career. So it's something that I continue to encourage folks. You never know what nuggets you might share with someone that will give them that lifeline that says you can continue doing this and you have the support you need to move on. So I think it's absolutely important that we continue to give back as we continue to progress in our careers.
Thank you so much. That's so important. What about you, Kaylin?
Yeah, definitely to piggyback off of Annabelle, it's definitely not a solo journey. It's always people in your corner. It's always people helping you along the way. And I would say for me, I really have to credit my parents. At a young age, they've always involved me in STEM activities, whether it be robotics, National Society of Black Engineers, or just camps in general, especially summer camps, get me out the house. But what was really important was when I was at those summer programs, I was surrounded by STEM professionals that looked like me. So going into those programs and seeing a Black female engineer really solidified in my mind and really gave me that encouragement that say, hey, I can achieve this. I can work in this field and I can gain an engineering degree. I also had a lot of mentors along the way that helped keep me accountable. So looking back on middle school and high school, Kaylin, I definitely didn't know the importance of mentoring and networking, but those older STEM professionals that reached back out to me and kept and fostered that relationship really were with me every step of the way and helped me say, hey, you can do this. Hey, keep going. Because if I'm being honest, there was many times in my journey where I was not so sure if this was my path, but definitely having those constant mentors along the way really helped me bring me across the finish line.
Thank you both for sharing. I definitely can relate as a woman and an engineer myself to many of what you've been saying and the experiences. So appreciate the fact that you can really share who was the person or the experience that really helped you in school or in your career. Now, I really want to bring all of the panelists back in. We're going to get into some Q&A and be able to ask all of the panelists questions. And the first question that I have is, along the lines of the pandemic, what really has been the impact of the pandemic or women in STEM and the STEM pipeline? Specifically for college students and working professionals. And Karen, I know that you all have done some research in this area at SWE. If you can kind of start us off to really talk about that.
Sure. And I just want to give a little plug because I did see a question in the Q&A about our research. So you can go to research.swe.org and see the COVID research as well as the climate control and a number of other things. But yes, Aisha, in June of 2020, we did a study of our members to understand how it was impacting, how the pandemic was impacting college and career plans. Almost 1/3 of our collegiate members who had received a summer job offer had the offer rescinded or postponed. Similarly, almost 1/4 of students who graduated in spring of 2020 had their job offers rescinded or postponed. 48% of students were concerned that the pandemic would delay their college graduation date. And more than 66% of these students who were very concerned about graduation delays reported that they were having difficulty with school life balance. So I think, pretty significant impact. I know we tried to do, work with employers around virtual internships and things, but it definitely, particularly those students, I think that were in the junior and senior years of their undergraduate, really felt the impact. In terms of our professionals, over 58% were considered essential workers, and more than half were required to physically report to their workplace during the ongoing pandemic. 37% reported concerns about losing their job in the next 6 months, and 70% reported concerns about their ability to find another job if they were to lose their jobs. These concerns were warranted, given that about a quarter of professionals reported that their employers had issued furloughs, implemented salary cuts, laid off employees, and had delayed promotion decisions, while more than half reported their employer had a hiring freeze. So I think, some pretty significant impact there as well. And then over 1/3 also reported experiencing more bias, particularly in the virtual environment. So going back to what we talked about with meetings, being talked over, interrupted, or ignored. So, the Zoom environment did not necessarily help what we saw that our members were experiencing.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And, we've definitely seen, throughout COVID, so many of those just, inequalities and, things really come to the forefront and come out. And, I think maybe this will really be helpful in us as we progress. We're going to be in this virtual space, for a little while longer. So we can really focus on not only what happens in the virtual space, but being able to really understand how, when we get back to face, to be able to really utilize what we learned to make sure that that is really happening in those face-to-face interactions as well. So thanks so much, Karen, for sharing that. I'm going to get into a couple of questions that have actually come in the Q&A. So the first one is, I think I'll pose this to Kathy. What advice do you have for young ladies in high school that maybe want to pursue STEM careers, but don't really want to go the traditional 4 or 5 year route? Are there STEM skilled trades as an option?
Yes, absolutely. And that is something that now you can find a lot of opportunities online to address those, but you do not need a 4-year degree to go into STEM and have a career. And I see Annabelle and Kaylin nodding as well, so they might want to chime in. But I think that's one of the barriers is awareness, and people even knowing, Annabelle and Kaylin, you spoke about this, knowing about engineering. And then that second barrier is realizing you don't have to be, science and math geniuses, and you don't have to have a 4-year degree to pursue engineering and an engineering career. I don't know if Annabelle or Kaylin, if you want to speak up on that as well.
Sure, Kathy, I would love to. We develop very complex products in our industry, and it takes engineers working together to design the products, but it's a whole other level of complexity to build them, right? To actually make these products come to life, it's technicians, it's skilled work that is very well paid, gets you hands-on on making products that solve problems and getting them out to the people that can use them. So there's absolutely opportunities to contribute, to be involved. And many times, especially after they've been building products for years, they end up being the experts on when something goes wrong. Mm-hmm. Guess who we call to figure out, have you seen this before? How have we solved this before? So absolutely encourage folks that there are plenty of opportunities to get your hands dirty, to be involved in solving problems, and you don't have to have an engineering degree to do so.
Would you like to add to that, Kaylin?
Yeah, just piggybacking off of what she said. And I know sometimes I'm guilty of this myself because I am an engineer, but sometimes when we look at STEM, we focus solely on the E and we focus on engineering, but it has a broad spectrum of degrees and careers that you can be involved with if you want to get into STEM. I know definitely me being on the younger side and with the new generation, I definitely have seen some other colleagues who are getting into, tech or getting into programming just by knowing people and getting certifications, practicing coding themselves. And a lot of, you can get a lot of technical degrees, without using that 4-year degree. So, and like she said, once you get more into your career, you focus on one thing or you have one specialty. So you cannot focus on everything. So that's when you really rely on those technicians, you really rely on those scientists who, are focusing on other things to help you get to the finished product. So it definitely has a big inclusion factor, and it's definitely a broad range of careers that you can get in to be involved in STEM.
Yeah, thanks for really pointing that out. We want to make sure that all students are encouraged throughout all the different fields, and to really make sure that there's a focus on not picking specific students. Like, you don't have to have straight A's. All of these fields really needs creativity. So making sure that all students, no matter what their interests are just even given the opportunity to explore what the opportunities are in all of these fields. So thank you for sharing. The next question I'm going to pose to Karen and Ursula, and then if any of the other panelists have anything to add. What programs are available to really support underserved schools in participating in STEM and engineering focused programs? Karen?
Yes, I'll just start. So at SWE, we have a program called SWE Next that is really designed to help pre-college girls connect with role models, with mentors. We have SWE Next clubs. There's no cost to form a SWE Next club. Any SWE Next club is connected with a SWE member who serves as helping the club, serves as that role model, that mentor. And really for us, it's, I think Kathy mentioned this at the beginning about helping girls develop that STEM identity early on. Often by middle school, they're starting to get messages that these fields aren't for girls, or that they have to be a rock star in math and science. Well, they have to be competent. Those certainly are tools that you use in STEM, but you don't need to be a rock star. And so I think through our programs, we have our members talk about their career paths and what the challenges that they had. One of our past presidents talks about having to take calculus twice in college, and after the first failure, she thought about dropping out, but she persisted and people encouraged her, and so I think for us it's providing that early access to see that you can do these things, that women, girls of color, boys, that that everybody can have a career in STEM. And so making sure that girls in particular know where they can go to get that encouragement and start to build that confidence and STEM identity early on.
Right, exactly. Ursula?
Sure, and I would add, and especially in particular coming out of my background in K-12 academia, also, having these culturally competent classrooms, and within the STEM, making sure that, the curriculum is, exposing the students, to inventors and inventions and things like that, of women and, underrepresented minorities. So they are seeing, people that look like them as they identify, and that's STEM across the board, as we mentioned, and not necessarily focusing on the E always. And then, personally, giving back. I've been invited to speak to WISE clubs, go into classrooms, kind of like Karen mentioned, and share my story with different organizations, and then, volunteering. So while WePan does not have an outreach arm, currently we are in the process of partnering with some organizations, Girl Scouts USA, GSUSA, we're in the middle of creating an MOU with them. So that will give us some opportunities to do some outreach and share with some of the K-12 as well, because that pipeline is important, making sure you keep it filled. We're not going to get, 50-50 by 2050 if we don't have students coming in and staying in the pipeline.
Right.
And Aisha, if I could also chime in. just to kind of piggyback on what Karen and Ursula were talking about, we do know, Discovery, we're a coalition and it's about collective impact. And the research that we've done is that we do know bringing, an engineer volunteer into the classroom with an educator and a student around an activity is really what sparks that interest. And I think Annabelle talked about that, that there was somebody, a teacher, who said, you need to pursue this. But we know we need to reach students when they're young and in grade school. So, and there's lots of activities. We have them on our website that we have for age appropriate, and it's just to make it engaging. And it's so important, having all of us here on this panel, it's so important to have these volunteers come in the classroom, and to Ursula's point, to see, diverse backgrounds, so people can see that there's women and there's women of color who are in these fields, who are technicians, who don't have that 4-year degree, or they do. So there's just, that is so important as we're talking, that I think all of us can agree on, is that shared experience and having a mentor or a role model for kids in grade school all the way up. You need a support system. I think Annabelle talked about that. You don't do this alone. I think Kaylin, you talked about it as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much, Kathy. So I'm going to pose the next question to Kaylin and Annabelle. Do you think employers and even maybe colleges, when you were in college, are doing enough to really address bias and sexism and racism by providing training and somehow raising awareness in terms of starting the conversation? How can we provide that training and awareness, even in schools, to reach younger girls? I'll start with you, Kaylin.
I'm sorry, I was having a little bit of internet connection. Could you say the question one more time?
Do you think that employers and maybe even colleges are doing enough to really address bias and sexism and racism by providing training and somehow really trying to raise awareness and start the conversation? How can we provide that training and awareness even in schools to reach younger girls?
Yeah, definitely. I think the companies are trying, but I think we need to be honest and look at the topic and know that it's new. And anytime you're approaching something new, you have to be accountable on both sides. So not every company is going to be perfect. And, on the receiving end, it's not going to be perfect either. So I think really just approaching the situation with an honest and genuine platform is really what's going to get across, not having someone make mistakes and try to cover it up, or just having an open pathway to, reach the schools and reach younger people, but, also be willing to take feedback. So I think it's just a whole learning process overall. But I do think, and I can, speak for my company, I do think that, trainings are in progress. It's more so, in order to work on something, you have to be aware of something. And I think the first steps are becoming aware of the situation and then taking those next steps to work on it.
Thanks so much. Annabelle?
Yeah, Aisha, I'll add. So no, I don't think we're all doing enough. Let's start there. There's a lot more work that we all need to do. And the first step is admitting that we have a problem. So there's more. I would say it's been encouraging, and I've been in this industry and in my career for quite some time, of seeing how much has changed, particularly over the last year with the riots and those horrible deaths that have happened at the hands of police, of really highlighting that there is a problem. And I think I've been encouraged to see more companies just being upfront about the differences, the discrimination that happens in our communities, and then taking it back of what happens within our walls, what's happening within our industries, how do we treat people? And so you're starting to see a lot more progress. And we've had these conversations within my company as well. It's great to have these dialogues. The next step is, what are the actions that we're going to take to make a difference? And there's more work to do. But even as Karen was talking earlier, bias is such a strong component of what we do every day. And there's a lot more training happening in terms of recognizing our own unconscious bias on what judgments we make about people, what we assert, even without thinking about it, that sets people apart and sets them differently. So we're seeing a lot more of those types of behaviors. But even as Kaylin said, we all have to take ownership of the fact that no matter our backgrounds, no matter what we've done, no matter how exposed we've been to discrimination ourselves, that we encourage it sometimes unconsciously as well. And we've got to recognize the work that we've got to do, and then help the people around us along this journey as well, so that we can all make a difference. But there's so much more work that we need to do. And you know, you mentioned racism and sexism. I'd also say ageism. You know, starting off in your careers, it's sometimes that much harder. Not to mention, then you're a female or a person of color, you've added all of these other stereotypes that are put against you of how inexperienced you are. So I think there's a lot that we need to do to encourage, especially young career professionals that are trying to learn, that have all the aptitude and attitude. They just need to learn, and we've got to give them the opportunity to do so as well.
Yeah, such great points you just made. I mean, it does go really beyond just training. You know, I think companies and even universities are trying to even create more opportunities just to have people just kind of gather in the same spaces. Sometimes just putting people together and being able to have informal conversations really do help with a lot of that as well. And, you know, you're seeing that in some workshops and conferences and just informal like lunches that, you know, are happening and going on. So there's not one kind of quick fix to this. There are many things that we need to do, like you all just mentioned. So thank you for sharing. The next question I'm going to pose to Karen and Ursula, and then if any of the other panelists have anything to add. How do you see the role of allyship to advance women representation in engineering?
Yeah, it's huge. We talk about this a lot at SWE. I know WePan does it as well. Really, we can't do it alone. And so I would say this goes across the engineering community. We certainly want men to be allies for women within the engineering community, serving as mentors, but serving as sponsors. You know, we know the critical role that sponsors play in individuals advancing within an organization. But I would also say, you know, women to be allies for other underrepresented groups within the workforce. And, you know, SWE, we have a number of MOUs with other diversity organizations, because we really do see this as something where we all need to work together. If we want to see an engineering workforce that represents the demographics of our country, we do really all need to be working together. And so we need to be allies for each other if we want to, you know, see the change that we really want to have. And so I would encourage anybody that is in the STEM pathway, whether it's, you know, a K through 12 educator to university faculty, to folks that are in the workforce, to really, you know, take a look around your classrooms and your organizations and make sure that you're, you know, you're helping everyone, and that you're being an ally as much as you want someone, you know, to be an ally for you. But yeah, it's not a problem for just the women to solve, or just the people of color. We really need everybody working together as allies.
Right.
And I would,
Ursula?
sure, I would agree with everything Karen says. We do a lot of different training and things on allyship, and I would not be where I am today without, you know, sponsors and allies that were men. Another important piece that Karen started to touch on, even within your own gender group, for example, women, you know, having those conversations about how, you know, white women can be allies for women of color, because sometimes that may be the dynamic. So, you know, or anywhere within our intersectionality that we may have a place of privilege, use that to be an ally for others that might be in the marginalized category.
Yeah, so true. And just to kind of extend that question, another question has come in just on related to how you really balance being your authentic self against stereotypical or perceived thoughts about you in the workplace, especially being a Black woman in STEM. And this question was posed to Kaylin and Ursula. So I will let you, Kaylin, start off, and Ursula, you can follow up.
And, you know, I can give you the most, you know, genuine, honest answer I can give. You know, it's difficult, you know, as Karen touched on earlier, that 1%, you know, I feel that 1%, you know, when I walk into work every day, you know, I feel, you know, being, as Annabelle touched on, being young, just going into the field, and then also being a woman, and then also being Black. So it's definitely what I have found that helps for me is to create those mentorships and create those relationships, because, they're in my corner and they're allies, they're not, people of color all the time. And, they'll encourage me and say, you deserve to be here, you can be here. And, just because I know that, sometimes you just need to hear a little encouragement, but having people, accept you and feel included, starting with making those relationships. And sometimes, it's just because they don't know you. It's because they haven't unlearned those stereotypes that they have embedded, so making those relationships and making those connections. I know myself, just being new to the field, I've made connections with people on my project and just talked to, 3 or 4 people to create a network. And, I can already tell a difference already, with their help of allyship, make myself feel comfortable coming into workplace, because I know that, people support me and people are there for me.
And exactly, kind of what Kaylin said, I have had those same experiences, being the only one or one of a few. And then when you don't necessarily look your age, there's this weird ageism dynamic that's added to it, that you're treated in a certain way despite what your credentials are. The one difference I will say is, as I moved up in my career, my ability to be able to, just because of, the way my CV looks in my position, I could speak up more. Whereas when you're new, and I've had this discussion of this dynamic in the field, you almost have to, you have to find a way to navigate that, because speaking up might be detrimental to you, because then you get blackballed. So there is an entire process that you work throughout your career, which is unfortunate, but having that support system is key. And kind of like Kaylin said, not, having people, mentors and sponsors and different people like that you can go to, run that situation by, and just decompress, have somebody there to listen and support you and stand up for you is very, very key, because you can't do it alone.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. We definitely all need to just learn from each other and be really empathetic to each other's experiences. I have one more question. I'm going to pose it to Kathy before we wrap up. I know that Discover E does tons of different programs and has a lot of different information, but this question was just, is there anything that I can do to learn more about STEM while being at home?
Yes, you can go to discovere.org. We have a lot of information on that site, all of our coalition members' information. So you can find out about SWE and WePan and Bechtel and Raytheon. All of our partners have information on that site. And then we have at-home activities, and they're organized by age group. So if there's activities you're looking for, if you're a student and you're looking for things to do at home, a parent or a volunteer, it's all available on that site. And it'll also take you to other organizations for you to kind of figure out where your STEM identity might be. So it's all online.
Thanks so much for sharing. And there are tons of questions about how people get in contact with you all. So I don't know if you want to share maybe some of your contact in the chat. I know that we're very grateful to have all of the panelists here to really share your knowledge and experience and suggestions and advice. So personally, I just want to say thank you so much. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Kathy for any closing remarks that she has.
I do. I just wanted to thank everyone. Thank you, Aisha. Thank everyone on our panel. I want to thank the team behind the scenes and the staffers for the congressional women who joined us today. And I do want to thank the Congressional Women in STEM Caucus for providing remarks. It's been a great conversation. And please, you can find information about all the organizations online. So discovere.org. You can also go to SWE's website and WePan. But yes, I just think this has been a great conversation, and I thank everyone for joining us today and for our audience. So everyone, I think we've run out of time. It's 1 o'clock. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Everybody.
Take care. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.